Hello again. We're going to dedicate this video to a piece of equipment that causes some people more than the fair share of headaches, and it's this. It's the Synscan controller, and what we're going to cover is how to flash the firmware in this, and also a couple of the settings that you come to put into it when you set your mount up that are causing one or two people a few problems. Now, if we take a closer look at this controller, on the bottom we've actually got three connectors. This one is a power connector. This is only used if you're connecting the handset directly to a PC without using your mount. Normally your mount supplies the power to your handset. And the opposite end, we've got the connector that connects your mount to the actual handset, and in the middle we've got the data connector. Now the data connector, you use one of these, which is the Skywatcher data lead, and on one end it has a DB9 connector, commonly known as a serial connector. On the other end it's got an RJ11 connector, and that plugs directly into the middle socket on your handset, like so. Now you've probably noticed that it's got a serial connector on the end of this, and it's a bit unavoidable really, but a few PCs nowadays we don't have serial connectors, so what you're going to need is one of these, and this is a USB to serial converter. But the thing is, it's not a fantastic way of doing it, and even Skywatcher say, you know, it's not a recommended method. It depends on what your operating system is and your PC, and there's like all sorts of factors. They do work for me, these, and they probably work for most people, but you might have some problems with drivers and stuff. So, you know, if you do have trouble, it's as well to just sort of find a PC that's got a serial connector on it. Now, to do the firmware flash, we're going to need some software, and for that we're going to have to download a couple of things. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go over to the Skywatcher site and just download the software we need. What I would recommend is that you make a folder on your desktop, call it Skywatcher, and we'll download into that folder. Right, we're now on the Skywatcher site, and the place to go for our downloads is we move to Customer Support, and next we click the Downloads link, and that provides us with this menu. Now you need to choose which version of Synscan you've got, whether it be the AZ version or the EQ version. In my case it's the EQ version, so we click there, and it will now list the software downloads available for our particular piece of hardware. Now the first thing that we want is the firmware loader, which is this one. So we click, that then takes us to another page, and you'll see the piece of software listed and the download link. Now I'm not going to actually download it because I already have done previously, but just click on download and then browse to the folder that we made earlier, the Skywatcher folder. Next we need to go back to the EQ firmware updates, and next we need to download the firmware itself. Now at the point of recording this, the latest firmware was 3.27, so we click there, and again click on download and download into your Skywatcher folder. So now we should have a Skywatcher folder on the desktop or wherever you've placed it with 2 zip files in there. So next we're just going to separate and unzip those. Right, we're now in our Skywatcher folder that we made earlier, and as you can see we've got the 2 zip files, one for the loader and one for the actual firmware. At this point what I would do is make 2 new folders, and called one of them firmware and call the other one loader, like so. Now then, take the firmware one and just unzip it into the firmware folder, and take your loader and unzip it into your loader folder. So now if you look in these 2 folders, you'll have the loading softwares in there and the firmware is in that one. So next what we're going to do is we're going to connect up our handset and get ready for flashing the firmware. Right, we're now going to connect our handset to the computer in order to do the update on it. And the first thing that we need to do is to connect the data lead to that central socket like we showed you earlier, and the next part is where we need to be a little bit dexterous. We've got to power up the handset. Now the power supply used is the same one that you use for your mount, which is a 2.1mm tip positive 12 volt supply, and what we've got to do, like I said, we need to be a little bit dexterous, is when you power up when doing a firmware update, you need to hold in the keys for 8 and 0 whilst you power up. So hold those keys down, plug in, and the handset will bleep at you, and it will also now say on the front Synscan update. Just a little word on flashing your firmware. You can find sometimes on an odd occasion that your handset just starts to play up. It's not doing the things that it should be doing for you. You know, some little quirks or nuances. And what you can do is you can try reflashing your handset. It's a bit like with a Windows system, you know, on your computer. You sort of, it starts playing up, and every now and again a format and a reinstall sort of helps it out. And it's, you know, it's no different with your handset. Sometimes people have had the handsets that have died. They're not very good at handling condensation for some reason, and people who've had dead handsets have also managed to bring them back to life by reflashing. And the next thing is that occasionally Skywatch will update the firmware, and when they update it sometimes adds new features, sometimes new objects, you know, stars and deep space objects, or just corrections to maybe bugs that are already in there. So it's worthwhile keeping your eye on the Skywatcher site. So next, what we're going to do is move over to our software that we downloaded and actually perform the flash on the handset. Right, we've now connected up our handset, and it's back to the folder again where we downloaded to earlier, and we've got the two folders with the loader and the firmware in. So go to the loader and start the loader up. Next you need to browse to the firmware file that you downloaded, click on open. Now as a default it says auto detect COM port. I've never had any problems with that at all, and I would just leave it as it is. So next all we have to do is click on update. It'll then connect to your controller, and don't worry that it first says erasing. I've seen various forums and people have gone to sort of flash the firmware and it said erasing and they've panicked and it's like, oh, what's it doing? And don't worry about it. It's basically, it's got to erase what's already there before it rewrites the fresh. And this will now go up to 100%, and it can take some time, so we're going to skip in a moment. But one warning is, whilst it's doing this, while it's doing that update, don't touch anything, just leave it to do it. Don't touch your handset, don't mess with your computer, just let it get on with it, because the last thing we want you to do is to sort of, you know, mess something up and have a failed flash. So what we'll do is we'll skip forward until the point where it's ready for finishing. Okay, as you can see now we're just hitting the 90% and it's about to complete. Once it's completed you will get the update complete sign on the software. So you've now successfully updated your handset, and at this point now we can close that loader and you can unplug your handset and it's all completely updated. So next we're just going to go on to a couple of the settings once you've flashed your firmware. Right, we've now got our handset with the latest firmware in it and everything. It's time then to connect back up to your mount and actually start to play with your toys. And there's three things that cause people no end of grief with regards to doing the setup, and the three questions that appear on internet forums time and time again, so I'm just going to cover those. The first one is the day and date. Now when you come to put the day and date into a Synscan handset, it wants them in American format, which gets a bit confusing for British people. Like today's date is the 24th of May 2011, and in the UK we would write that as 24/05/2011. In America they would write it as 05/24/2011. So what we need to do is put the date in American format, which, like I said, would be 05/24/2011. That's the first one with regards to the date. Now the next one is daylight saving, and it's like, you know, you see these questions all the time. Am I in daylight saving? What's daylight saving? Again, it's an Americanism, and it's not a term that we use in the UK. We actually use BST in the UK, British Summertime. And what it is, British Summertime, is that period, and it starts on the last Sunday of March and it finishes on the last Sunday of October. It's when our clocks alter. So if we're in between the last Sunday of March and the last Sunday of October, then the answer is yes. If we're outside that period, then the answer is no. Next we're going to go on to longitude and latitude, and again it causes a lot of confusion. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through a website that shows you exactly what to put into your handset, and hopefully that'll sort you out. So back onto the internet. Okay, this is actually the second take on this section of the video, and it's going to replace the old one. Basically, in the first one we got it wrong, and I'm not going to take full responsibility for it, because if you do a search on the internet for the format that a Synscan hand controller wants its latitude and longitude, you'll find as many that are giving you the wrong format as there are that are giving you the right one. After doing some more research and actually contacting Skywatcher, I now know that this is the definitive format that it wants, and this is the exact method for finding it as well as possible. So what we do is we come to this website, which is itouchmap.com/latlong.html. Now you will be presented with a world map, and you can, if you like, scroll around that map by dragging, and you can zoom in by using your scroll wheel on a mouse, or by using these controls. But a much easier method is if you move up to the top, there's actually an address bar here. Now this will take street names, and it'll take towns, it'll take UK postal codes. I don't know whether it'll take US zip codes, but I'll assume that it does. And all we do is we put an address in here, and it can be your back garden, and it can be a local observatory, or it can be a local dark site, doesn't matter. So what we'll do is we'll put an address in, and we click go. Now that will automatically zoom in to a satellite view, and you can actually click between map and satellite views. Now obviously I don't really live at Buckingham Palace, it's just a good example to use for this method being a well recognised and easy target. So once we've got our target, you can actually zoom in even further and pick the spot that your telescope's at. Now what you do is you left click, and it will place a blue flag, like a blue marker there. And if you place your blue marker and it's in the wrong spot, don't worry about it, just right click and it will pick it back up again. So once again, left click to place a blue marker. Once you've done that, if you then scroll down, the section that we want is this one, which is degrees, minutes and seconds. In actual fact, you can almost ignore the seconds section, because a Synscan handset isn't down to that many decimal places. Now what it also does on this page is it gives the format in negative and positive, which might just confuse a couple of people, because your Synscan handset obviously wants N, S, W or E. Now if you move over here, you can see that plus is for north latitude or east longitude, and minus is for south latitude or west longitude. So if we go back over here to this latitude, we can see that it's a positive number, so that will be an N. If we look at this longitude, we can see that that's a minus number, so that will be a W. Now also your Synscan, it wants your longitude first for some reason, and it also does that one, it wants 3 digits for the first figure. So if we were putting these coordinates into our Synscan, we would put in 0, 0, 0, then move along to the next digits and put in 0, 8. Now you can, if you like, round these figures up. As you can see, this is over the 30 seconds. 30 seconds to the minute obviously is a full circuit, so you could round up to a 0.9 there if you wanted to, but it's not really that necessary. It's, you know, the system's just not precise enough really to notice any difference with that. Then obviously you would move over to this one and put in 51 and then 30, and then just press enter on your Synscan handset, and that's it. You've then put in your latitude and longitude, and it will save that. It's one of the few pieces of information that your Synscan handset actually saves when you switch off and switch on again. And you know, like I say, you can leave that unless you're changing location and moving somewhere else. And that's about it for this video. So once again, thanks for watching.